Yep. All right. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Fall Speaker Series, Keep It 100. My two friends and I, along with our fathers, decided to do something similar to a TED Talk, where we bring up people from the community to talk about the arts, athletics, business, essential service, leadership, military, and other aspects of life. In this series, we wanted to give everyone the opportunity to rub shoulders with some giants, listen to their life stories, and their journey to get to where they are now. As the audience, you will be muted, but you will be able to ask questions in the chat about each guest that we have. If we are able to, we will unmute you so that you can ask chat questions to our chat monitors, and they will ask them for you. Audience, if you can take a moment in the chat and please let us know who you are, where you're from, and how you heard about the program. We would love to welcome you. Also, the audience, as a side note, we cannot ask questions of Coach Henderson regarding recruiting because of the NCAA rules. We have organized our time to start out with learning about Coach Henderson's growing up years, then his educational years, and then his career. I just want to take a moment and introduce the interviewers and the chat monitors right now. Mr. Coleman, Mr. Ramos, Mr. Rosica, and my friends Devin Coleman and John Ramos. So now to get to the bio, Coach Mitch Henderson is a Princeton University alumni and head basketball coach. Coach Henderson is the third winningest coach in the history of Princeton University men's basketball team. Under Coach Henderson's tutelage, 8 Princeton alumni have gone on to professional careers. In 2017, Henderson was the NABC District 13 Coach of the Year and was a finalist for the Jim Phelan National Coach of the Year award. Coach Henderson studied at Princeton University and received a BA in economics in 1988 and played for the Princeton from 1994 to 1998. In addition, he coached at Northwestern University from 2000 to 2011 and has been head coach at Princeton University from 2011 to the present. Welcome, Coach Henderson. Thanks for joining us. The Keep It 100 team and the audience are so glad that you can take the time to join us on this Sunday night. And welcome to our podcast.
Thanks for having me, Sebastian. Great introduction, and let's get to it. I'm thrilled to be joining you guys.
Thank you. So before we get started, could you please share with us a little bit about your family?
My family, oh wow, good starting point. Everyone who doesn't like to talk about their kids. So I live here in Princeton, and I have 3 kids, 8, 6, and 2. I'm a very proud husband, father. I always say that I'm a coach, right? But I always say that I'm a better father because I'm a coach, and I'm a better coach because I'm a father. So I consider it to be my most important role in life. So my kids love their community here in Princeton, and I'm a basketball coach. They love coming to the games, but we don't always get into the basketball part of it unless they want to, right? So, but my kids are right now, Sebastian, they're downstairs watching the end of the football games, and then they can't wait to watch the Patriots Seahawks game here tonight. So we're big sports families here.
That's great. Thank you. So if we can start with your growing up years. Devin, would you have any questions for our speaker today?
Yeah. So who did you want to be like when you were a kid?
So thanks, Devin. I mean, so the most important person that in my life, the people in my life were my parents. And I had an uncle, so my dad's brother, who that's who I wanted to be, and at a very young age. And what I learned from him was whenever I was around him, and this is when I was 5, 6, 7, I remember this distinctly, he always made a point to get down to my level. So he'd come down right to my eyes and look me in the eyes. And I always remembered that when I would talk to him, all the other adults in my life, mostly my parents, would stop and watch. And they'd be like, okay, what's Uncle Jim going to say to Mitch? And that was who I wanted to be. And what his big thing was, he always talked about what book he was reading and how well read he was. And it was imposed upon me. And I say imposed, that's where it was at a very young age, and how important it was to read. And that's, even today, he's still in my life and comes to some of our games here. I don't know. I wanted to be a lot like him when I was growing up. Now, and if I could just add a little bit, now now that I'm a coach and I have sort of a different role, I look very much at my role as learning, and I still feel like I'm growing up, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I want to make sure that I'm learning from my players and the people around me, the other coaches on staff, from you and your peers. I don't feel like I'm done on that question by any means.
Thank you.
So, John, do you have a question?
Yeah. What challenges did you have to overcome in your childhood?
Hi, John. So I was the second of four. I think that the hardest thing for me growing up was just the fact that I'm from a really small town in southern Indiana, and I didn't know about a lot of things that were outside of my little small town. So I don't think I even knew it was a challenge until I got to be a little bit older. I say this to my guys sometimes, John, but the guys on the team now, like, sports has given me so many opportunities to learn what I don't know. So I would say I realized the challenges that I had growing up were in being welcoming of meeting new people and trying out different things and learning new things. And a lot of times for me, that was through sports. But I had terrific parents and a really great way to grow up. There were no, so I grew up like a middle class family. My dad was in construction. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. So I did not have anything that was that stood out being very difficult. I always look it back and say, like, I'm so thankful that my parents were open-minded to allow me to play so many sports. That's been a big thing for me.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions from our audience? Mr. Ramos?
No, Coach. Who was your favorite teacher and why?
My favorite
teacher, yeah.
Teacher, yeah. So I had you're gonna hear a theme, Mr. Ramos, with me. It's so my junior year English teacher. Now let me just fast forward a little bit. So when I got to Princeton, I played for Pete Carrill. And I'm noticing Mark Bass on the call here. So when I was a freshman, we got coached by Pete Carrill, and we went down and we played Mark's team. But he was the best teacher I've ever had. But the best teacher was my junior year English teacher, Mr. Tressler. He was very hard on me, and I remember distinctly that Mr. Tressler would make he improved my writing grammar. So my sentence structure, I thought I was a good writer, but I remember he would talk about whenever you use the word however, you needed to have, if you started a sentence off with it, needed to have a comma after it. It was a book called Strunk & White's Rules of Grammar. That book really stayed with me because of him, and I attribute so much of my ability to have been accepted at a place like Princeton because of him. You have to write a lot of papers here at the university. You write a lot. Like even today, I write 20 or 30 emails a day, just staying in touch with people. And I think a large part of he was hard, right? Like, and I think a lot of times when you go back on teacher, like, you were hard on me, and they go, you're welcome,
Mr. Rossica, do you have any questions, maybe from the audience?
And nothing from the audience yet. But Coach, apart from being challenged by the English teacher, were there other challenges in your growing up years that you look back and were thankful for?
Yeah, I mean, so I was really, Tony, I was very interested in sports. So basketball, football, baseball, I wanted to play, and I wanted to play at the highest level. And it was, I was fortunate that my parents told me that sports was great, Mitch. We're glad you love them, but school is the most important thing. But man, I hung on to every word that my coaches said to me, every word. So I had a freshman year basketball coach who ended up marrying my wife and I. He was an ordained minister as well as being a coach and an English teacher who, again, was very hard on me. But what I realized was that he would say to me all the time, Mitch, if I stop talking to you, then you know that I've given up. He was always coaching me beyond the whistle, off the court, which I thought was, at the time I was 15, I didn't get it. How old are you guys here? Sebastian, John, how old are you guys? Devin?
17.
17, okay. Not much younger than you guys. I always thought somebody was picking on me, but I feel like now that was the greatest gift he could have given me. He was engaged in my development, and I was stubborn. I was really difficult to coach, Tony. Not an easy person to be around. And I think that when you're stubborn, like I was, and I still am, being around people that are patient with you is key, to give you the time that you need to get out of your own stubbornness, but also maybe showing you that there's a more graceful way to do things, which is what his whole demeanor was. Like I mentioned, he was my coach and an ordained minister, and he's turned me on, Tony, to my spiritual side as a coach, which I mentioned Pete Carrill. It was like the opposite of spiritual playing for Carrill. It was like there's a ruthlessness to it. And I don't know, I really feel like when I'm myself, I think that's a big part of who I am too.
That's great. Thanks, Coach.
Yeah,
I see Mark sent a question in the chat.
I have a
what's up, Mark?
question. Mitch, can you explain to these young men what made you leave Indiana to come to Princeton? Because some of these guys are high school seniors, and
Yeah.
they might want to leave home. So can you explain to them, like, leaving Indiana, coming to Princeton, New Jersey? You know, I stay locally, I'm close, but can you explain to them what made you leave Indiana and to come to Princeton?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mark. And first, if I could just say, you don't even know this, but you know, when you're a young freshman and you go, and I think you had in 1994, 95, was that your junior year? Yeah, you guys were really good, and we got rolled at St. Joe's. Bad. It was not. It was a bad loss, but I was guarding you, and you know, you learn a lot about what you don't know sometimes by getting beat up. I've never learned much winning. I've always learned a lot more losing, and you beat us good that night, so I appreciate that from you. But I'll tell you, Mark, this is the number one thing that I'm about to say right now that is my biggest challenge here as the coach at Princeton is getting young men to see that there is a bigger path in front of them than just sports, and that you should strive to be the best and look for the best opportunity that you could possibly find. When I was in high school, I wanted to go to Butler, and Butler's right there in Indianapolis, if anybody knows about Butler basketball. And I wanted to play basketball. And I also was getting recruited by Princeton and Harvard. And I remember my dad, he's like, well, okay, what are you thinking about? And I was like, well, Butler and Ball State. And I was hoping that Notre Dame would recruit me. They never did. And then I go, Princeton and Harvard. He goes, let's go over that list again. And I said, Princeton, Harvard. And he goes, let's stop right there. So that's the first point, is you need to listen to to the people that are closest to your heart, that have your best interest at heart, number one. Number two, I didn't know anything when I was your age. These guys, I didn't know anything. I thought I knew everything, but I didn't know what I know now, which is you've got to use sports or your talents to get into the best school you can possibly get into. So whether that's coming to 15 miles away here in Princeton, or whether it's going across the country, you need to go to a place that allows you to get into the best school you can possibly get into. Now, basketball, for Mark, you and I, it happened to be an avenue to do that. But it can be the trombone, it can be the choir, it can be anything. And we want to be great at whatever we're doing, but you got to go to the best school you can get into.
Like when I told these, I don't know if I told these guys when I talked to them, when I recruited Amir Bell.
Yeah.
Amir Bell's parents told me, look, St. Joe's or Princeton. I said, shoot, it's a no-brainer. You go to Princeton because of the education. You don't get that Princeton education at St. Joe's. I love you to death. It's a no-brainer. So when I tell kids Ivy League and A10 or CAA, whatever, you got to get that Ivy League education because it's going to take you places.
Well,
you're going to meet people.
I should be thanking you. That was Amir don't tell anybody. He's one of the favorites of all time. But here's an interesting story about Amir Bell, Mark. His grandfather worked on campus forever, and he would paint. He was a painter. And how about that, right? Like, so you got that man's grandson goes to the school where he was painting the rooms, right? So that was a source of pride in the Bell family, was that Amir's grandfather would say to him, I'm doing this, I'm working at a place like this, so you can go to school here, young man.
Steve.
Coach, you talked about playing multiple sports. Did you play multiple sports through high school, and at what point did you figure out basketball was your vehicle, and that's what you were?
Yeah, I did. I was, again, I thought of myself, Reggie. My idol growing up was Deion Sanders. I loved that he played two sports at the highest level. Nowhere near the athlete, but I wanted to play. I'm not kidding. I wanted to play basketball and football. And that's what I wanted, baseball and football. That was what I wanted to do. And I don't know if you remember when he played for the Falcons in the morning and the Braves at night, and they were in the World Series. And I think they were in the playoffs. It's still one of the greatest things ever. But, I got drafted by the Yankees in high school, out of high school my senior year. I played baseball here at Princeton for 1 year. And the scout for the Yankees called me. I had already been accepted to Princeton. I was coming here. And the scout called me and he said, hey, Mitch, we drafted you in the 24th round. What are your plans? I was like, oh, this is great. He's like, what are your plans? I got accepted to Princeton. He goes, go to Princeton, click, and hung up the phone as fast as he could.
Wow.
So, you have these visions of how good you are at something, but sometimes, you get a phone call from the scout of the Yankees. I don't even remember his name, but I'll always remember that.
Sure.
Thank you. So if we can transition to your college years at Princeton University, if you can talk about your experience there, maybe why you decided to go to Princeton. Devin, would you like to start with the first question?
Yes. Was there any key figures in college that were there key figures in your life in college and what made them so important to you?
So this is an easy one. There was one figure in my life here at Princeton, that was Pete Carrill. He was the coach, and I always challenge my players to have personal relationships with professors. And I'm sad to say I did not have that while I was a student here at Princeton. I know this call is getting recorded, but it's a huge regret of mine. But I felt like there was an education for us on the court And Coach Kirill, he really changed my life. Outside of my father, he's the single most influential male figure in my life. And his greatest gift to me was he was honest. And I'm going to tell a couple funny things about me. He used to ask me if I had polio as a kid. I did not have polio as a kid because I would fall down sometimes. And he was always, hey, what's wrong with you? He would ask if I needed to have my white blood cell count checked. He was really hard on all of the guys on the team, but in particular, he was hard on you if he saw that you had potential to get to the next spot, maybe the next level. But he was honest, always honest. So I had never been around a coach that was like that. We called it a culture of brutal honesty at Princeton. And I always say this, like, we were very good. We ended up having really good teams, not when we played Mark's teams, but after that. And we ended up being 7th in the country my senior year. And I think that a large part of that was because you get over yourself. In basketball, if I could just talk about basketball for a second, I think it's the ultimate game of self-expression and selflessness, working with your team. And there's no barrier to entry. Men, women, like I have little kids. I have a boy, a girl, and a boy, 8, 6, and 2, right? So I think at the youngest grade level, my little girl, I love that she plays with the boys. And she says, well, the boys don't pass to me. And I say to her, like, let's go get it. Let's go get the ball. I think a big part of basketball, what I love about it is it teaches you how to express yourself. And Coach Kirill, in his own way, was teaching all of us to overcome. And if this makes sense, like you get into Princeton, Devin, sometimes you think you're a little special, you sort of start to think like I got, like God gave me something that he didn't give anybody else. And what Kirill did is he took that and he said, you're not special. You need to work for it just like everybody else. And that's the most important thing that we learned was nobody was given anything, especially us, because we weren't that athletic and we had really good players, but we had to do all the little things well in order to win. So I would say that's a really good question, because because that's who I am now, right, Devin? That's who I want to be to your age group. I'd like to be somebody that that my guys can count on to help them.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I definitely agree with that. Like, I just feel like as a coach, the more honest you are, the more who you're teaching, whatever player you're teaching, has to understand they have to work on. If you're sugarcoating it, they're not fully comprehending, what they need to improve on.
Well, Sebastian, like when you're told the truth, it kind of sucks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not easy to hear it at first, and especially now when we're on Zoom, it's not the same. Like if I say Sebastian, or I wouldn't say anything to you, Sebastian, because you seem like a really nice guy. But if I were to say something mean to you, I can't really deliver that the same way as I can in person. I can lean in. I can, I got a mask on all the time. But I think that's a crucial part. And then, but equally as important is how you bring somebody along. So you guys are all 17 on this call, the kids? Yeah, so there's some 15-year-olds out there that think you walk on water. Just remember that. And make sure you're putting your arm around them.
Yeah, for sure. John, do you have any questions?
Yeah. Do you remember of any events that happened in college that you would say shaped you?
Always the failures, John. Doesn't that sound messed up? Always when I didn't do well. I had 8 turnovers in a college basketball game. That shaped me. I got an F while I was at Princeton. That was my first F in life. That doesn't sound like much, but I was messing around. I was messing around a lot when I was here. Way more interested in being social And I had one of the assistant coaches who ended up being my coach, being a really good coach. His name John Thompson was one of the assistants when I was at Princeton. He came up to me and he sort of stuck his finger right in my chest and he goes, he said, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And he just looked me right in the eyes and I was like, "What?" And he goes, "Don't give me that bullshit." He's like, "What are you doing?" And what he was saying, he was leaning in on me and I appreciated that. And it cracked the shell that I had put up, which was like, "Leave me alone. I'm fine. I'm going to be fine." And that's, like I said, I told you I was stubborn, right, John?
Yeah.
Stubborn, like nobody can tell me what to do, and that's not a good quality. And I feel like that was really important for me. That moment, that got me to open up, made me a much better player, way better student, better son. And I've tried to carry that lesson on to my role as a coach. Man, I've made so many mistakes, John. So many mistakes. Like I too many to count. I remember those really well. I don't remember the successes as well. I don't know what that is or why that is. I think it's just, I don't know, but that's how it is for me.
Thank you.
Is there any questions from the audience, Mr. Wilson?
Yes, but I want to do a personal question. Coach, every team has a lead. Are you a lead during, like, when you play basketball in Princeton University, or how was the leadership in the team?
Like when I played or as a coach?
As a player.
As a player. So I saw a question in the chat. Mark asked earlier, like, did coaching choose me or did I choose coaching? So coaching, I feel very strongly, chose me. So I felt like I have always felt like that I have been working at being a leader since I was a little kid. I felt like my role at Princeton on the basketball team was the leader, Wilson, Mr. Ramos. That was what I saw, how I saw myself. And what I mean by that is 15 minutes early to everything, staying late to everything, always responding to everybody. Never backing down. Whenever we competed, being the most competitive, and learning how to use my voice not just to hold others accountable that were my own age, but and then encourage. And I always thought I would never get into coaching, but I think that when I left, as soon as I graduated, all of the coaches that I played for were trying to get me to come be a graduate assistant or an assistant coach right away. And I was confused by that. I was like, well, yeah, why would you want me? And they're like, wait, come on, this is what you're supposed to do. So I think that doesn't make you a leader of young men, but I think that those things were there. Now I would say this, and this isn't what you asked, but I've had to work way harder at being a coach than I ever did as a player, as a leader. I think just because you have to forget so much of what you were. None of it really matters when you get older. I think it's like I said, John, let's see, Devin, Sebastian, I see a couple of people here. Like, I learn more from you guys and my players than I do from reading books. So that's how I look at life.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Mr. Rosvica, do you have any questions from the audience or any personal questions?
There's one from the audience, but we'll save that for the coaching thing. I think that coaching section, even though we're kind of answering some coaching questions. But
yeah, I see that one. We'll save it for then.
Coach, I want to ask you. I just want to go back to that moment because we all have our moments in our lives where it's like that breaking point, the paradigm shifting in our lives that really transform us. I mean, what was it about that moment with that coach when he said, "What are you doing?" Like, what was it about that moment that you feel really caught your attention beyond all the other times that maybe the same message was being sent? Like, what was it?
Yeah, I thought about that a lot, Tony. I think, so many of us hear that we should sleep more. that the path to being great, like through hard work. And we know exactly, maybe how to lose weight or how to get stronger or how to study more, but I think that there are very few people that actually take the actual plan and do it. But what did it for me was I respected the person that was saying it to me. He did not mince his words often, and he said it to me, and he leaned in on me. And what I was doing at the time, it was I would say I was putting forth B level work, Tony. It wasn't like, and I think what he said to me was, and I say this to our guys now all the time, if you're gonna spend time, why are you spending so much time studying? If you're gonna spend that much time, do A-level work. Do A-level work. That's the key. Like, it's the key to everything, but get A's. When I look at transcripts, and I'm just telling you guys, I'm being honest, when I look at transcripts and I see C's are an indication of you telling the teacher and yourself, this is what I think about myself. I don't care that much about what this subject, maybe you don't like math, maybe you don't like English, but you're saying to yourself, like, I'm going to give myself a free pass here. And that's what I was doing, Tony. I was giving myself a pass. And I think what he did to me was he made me realize in a very deeply internal way, stop giving yourself a pass and go for the A-level work. Does that make sense?
It does. Very much so.
It kind of scared me.
In what way?
Well, I was afraid of him. So this is John Thompson Jr.'s son. So he has a little bit of his dad in him, who just passed away. But also my B-level work was good. So it was almost like he found me out. And I think that's key, is now I try to, like, ask myself the question all the time, like, without being hard on myself, is like, am I doing my best for the people around me? And if I can answer that, yes, then I don't know. I don't sleep well in general, but I think I sleep a little better.
Good. Thanks, Coach, for being honest about that.
Yeah.
Coach,
Mr. Coleman, you have a question?
I sure do. So, Coach, we have a bunch of 16 and 17-year-olds on a call tonight. Can we go back a little bit and talk about go back to Indiana and then going to Princeton your freshman year? A lot of these guys are a year away from stepping onto a college campus somewhere. Could you talk about the hurdles or challenges as a freshman and give them any tips on how they might avoid some of those obstacles, or how you can share how you overcame them?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad, and Reggie, I'll talk right to the kids here, and a little bit of this is me talking, let's say, to my team, but in the recruiting process, you're having conversations, and if I'm talking to you, Reggie, I want you to come to Princeton, so we're gonna have a great talk. Man, your beard, I love your beard. Look at you, you look so good. Look at those shoulders. I wish I had shoulders like that, right? There's a little bit of that. And then I try to lean in a little bit on that process too, and say, this isn't for everybody. This is what we stand for here, and I hope that you feel good about it. I never talk about the other schools the kids are potentially getting recruited by or interested in. Now, let me go back now to myself at that age. It's hard for me to remember, but I'm just like the kids here on the call, the young men here, and so are my guys. And by that, I mean this. The guys that are the most successful come in as freshmen curious. That's the most important quality by far. You don't have it all figured out. Here at Princeton and anywhere you go to school, oftentimes the professor that's teaching your class will have written the book that you're reading in the class for your freshman seminar or your freshman lecture class. So I would challenge everybody here to, number one, start preparing yourself now, not when you're a freshman in college, not a year from now, to be comfortable talking to older teachers, to your teachers. And what you do is very simple, is ask them a question about themselves. That's a key quality. Like, tell me about how you got interested in teaching. Tell me about what got you interested in your path in life. And then listen. And then listen. And by God, if they don't remember your name the next time they see you, I'd be surprised. It's the same thing with college professors. The college professors here at Princeton right now are teaching all of their classes by Zoom. And they're struggling as much with that process as you are at home. And they're human beings. And so I always tell my guys, like, ask them questions about how they're doing. Do they have a dog? Are they walking that dog? What are they doing? You know, so this is key. So, and then let me say why that's important. Your goal in college should be to have to choose the professor that you like, because generally you might say, like, I really like the way that teacher taught that anthropology class. And if you don't know what anthropology is, you should look it up. And then all of a sudden you're an anthropology major, and you're on, you know, and somebody says, well, why'd you get interested in that? Well, right now, everybody in your life's probably telling you, like, why aren't you interested in something? You know what? You know, come on, show initiative in X, Y, or Z, right? You can't play basketball your whole life. You got to try something else. Okay. Has anybody heard that? That's what I heard all the time when I was your age. Okay. So that's what I heard all the time. And I would just say it's true, but you start to prepare yourself for the fact that it's okay to have relationships with adults, but to then listen. But when you get to college, that's the whole thing. Sports tends to be a little top down, you know, but academia is about learning. And if you make yourself a student for the rest of your life, that's the key to college. So do it now. Do it right now. Start to ask your teachers questions now.
Good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. So now you could transition to the career that you pursued after college. Devin, if you can start us off.
Yes. What led you to your career path, and like, at what point did you realize, you know, coaching is for me?
So I was answering Mark's question earlier that was in the chat. I did not know when I graduated from college that I wanted to coach. I wanted to play. I wanted to play, and I wanted to play as long as I possibly could. And everybody that knew me as a coach knew that I was going to be a coach except for me. I don't know, that seems like either you grow up wanting to be a coach or you don't. I played for a short amount of time. I had a quick stint in the CBA, a little quick stint, like a week with the Hawks. I played in Ireland. And I just loved to play, Devin. That's what I wanted to do. But I got into the business world for about 7 or 8 months, and I absolutely hated it. Putting on a suit, I still get itchy when I put a suit on. That's just not my thing. And I got into coaching, and the days were just flying by. I still feel like I haven't really worked a day. I love it. It's hard. It challenges me on every level, but I definitely know that I'm doing exactly what I need to be doing.
Thank you.
You know why? Because it's like, you know, well, how would you describe yourself, Devin? Do you like to play basketball?
Well, yeah, I actually used to, and then I quit to focus on soccer this past year.
Okay, good. So, you know, have you ever had a coach, you know, sort of look at you funny and sort of try to figure things out, like how it works for you?
Yeah, kind of basically. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think we've all been there. Well, I mean, so I think that's part of what we're doing. Like, you know, we're all trying to figure out, like, you're trying to figure out how to get better, and I'm trying to figure out how to get you better. I just think that's like a beautiful thing for both of us to do that together. I can't imagine I have a lot of friends that I went to college with that all they're doing is, and it's a good thing sometimes, but they're just trying to make a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. But that never interested me.
Thank you. John, would you like to ask him a question next?
Yeah. Mr. Henderson, what were your goals coming out of college, apart from, I guess, playing as much as you could?
Yeah. I wish I could say something, John, that was like, that was great. I was so boring. I just wanted to play all the time. I wasn't not like that when I got to college. I was very much more well-rounded. But by the time I was a senior, I was very interested in playing professional basketball. So my goals were very small, very micro. I was very interested in just getting better at what I could be athletically. I was obsessed with it. And I would say that I think that, and this is, I think that's kind of how when you're a 6'2" guard from Princeton, you've got to approach it like that. Does that make sense? Like, I didn't have like a bunch of physical attributes that were going to take me very far. That's what I wanted to do. But I did have one goal that I was proud of, and I carry it with me as I was trying to read about 30 or 40 books a year, even when I was playing. And I was able to do that as I was right out of college. So I read like 1,000 books by the time I was 30. And I feel very good about that. It's given me a lifelong passion for reading that, again, I go back to what I was saying in the beginning. I just think it's the key to life, having a love of learning.
Wait, before the next person goes, I have another question. So this been in like the back of my head, like, how are you like socially, and like how did you stay focused? Because like my age, us, we like to go out or whatever, friends, and I just want to know, like, how'd you stay focused and kept your head straight, basically?
In high school, I didn't do a thing. I wanted to be president of the United States. Nothing, not one thing. I mean, I was straighter than an arrow, maybe a little too straight, right? I was just like, nothing can stop me. I got here and I learned how to go out. I got here to Princeton, and that's when I had to be leaned in on. And I had to learn that about myself. So I think that I met Steph Curry once, Devin, and this is what I asked him, like, so tell me about your routine in between cities. So if they're playing at Sacramento and then they're on their way to Minnesota, and he said, I drive the bus on my own nutrition. So he would go to Whole Foods, wherever he would go, and he grabs all the fruits and vegetables. And first thing in the morning when they wake up, everybody's sleeping in, and he's at the Whole Foods, and he's got a blender that he travels with, puts all the veggies in there, makes himself a smoothie first thing in the morning. Then he takes, that gets him going, right? Nothing stopped him from being as good as he could possibly be. And I think that's the key, right? That's the key to life. Like what we talked about earlier that's A-level work.
Yeah.
So when you get to Princeton, a place like Princeton, the kid across the hall for me my freshman year is a neurosurgeon now. Like you don't meet that many neurosurgeons. And that was his routine. 7 a.m. every day, he was awake, no matter what day it was. He wasn't going out. And he occasionally would go out with us, but he was up studying. And then sometimes when I was coming back from wherever I was, 2 a.m, maybe messing around, guess what he was doing? He's still awake studying. So that's what it is. And a place like this is filled with people like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. It's cool to hear you met Steph Curry and explained his routine. as well as the neurosurgeons. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I also, Sebastian, that was not my path, and I would say that I got there eventually, and that's okay, right? Like that's what I think. Maybe I could say that, right? Like, you know, we're not all cut out to be neurosurgeons, but you know, we need to know what makes us tick, and for me, it's coaching. And you got to find your thing, each of you. You got to find it. Something that you're willing. I can watch basketball and talk basketball all day. You need to find your thing.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. Thank you. So does Mr. Wilson, do you have any questions from the audience?
Yes, I have from the audience. Coach, can you please describe in 3 words a good coach?
Oh yeah, wow. Listening. So this would be a different answer now than it was a few years ago. So listening, holding others accountable. So the ability to hold others accountable, accountability, and then teaching. I think you always have to be teaching, always teaching. I try to have, coaching is very different. So I was a point guard, and when I was coming up through, you were taught to make your teammates better and listen to the whole team and run the team, orchestrate the offense. You know, now point guards, I teach my point guards to play very differently, and everybody's a point guard. It's a very much of an evolution of the game. So if I were to come into a situation with a stubbornness, so again, I'm mentioning stubbornness as not a good quality, especially in marriage, terrible quality in marriage. But I think being very listening is the key. So I try to ask a lot of open-ended questions to the players. Tell me about what you were thinking. Sometimes, Mr. Ramos, the kids have a great day of practice. One of my favorite questions is, what'd you do today? How'd you do that? You know, almost like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. And then just listen. And I find that they're like, I don't know, I just wasn't thinking. You know, I just playing. And so then we get to talk about what that was about. And all of a sudden they're like, that was great how you brought that out of me. It's like, I didn't do anything. We just talked. I think just listening, that's probably number one.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rosica, do you have a question from the audience?
Yes, but let me ask you a question first, Coach, if I can. I'll come back to that question. I just want to go back to something you said earlier. Earlier you said that you are always learning and you learn from your players. Obviously right now you kind of led them in the path of how they did well, right? You maybe already knew the answer, but you're trying to bring it out of them. But you also mentioned that you're always learning from them. Like what's the last, let's say, 3 things that you learned from a player? But also before then, you know, we're coaches on this call. Like how does that happen? How does the learning process happen when you're the coach and they're the player to learn something new?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Boy, we could talk about this one all night. So let me answer that last part first, and then I'll go back to I'll try to think of 3 things here quickly. But I think that if I'm a top-down coach, and you know, I don't know if you can see my thumb, but if I've sort of got my thumb on top of you, like, listen, let me tell you, you know, I just don't think that works in the coaching environment for kids to grow and be their best. And by kids, I mean young men. In Europe, in soccer, I love football, like the Premier League. I love to watch it. And they don't go to college or high school in most soccer leagues across the world. In the United States, it's very different. But over there, they pluck you out of your school when you're 13, 14, and they put you into an academy. And you just play all the time. But by far, the largest group, the most difficult to group for them to manage is the 17 to 22-year-old kid who's making a lot of money because you're not quite ready to handle it. And the way to, and right now, I don't know if you guys follow this at all, but there's a player named Christian Pulisic. and he plays for Chelsea right now. He's a great player. And he's had some ups and downs, but the way to a young person's heart, and I say this to myself, is this is what I've learned, is to be very honest with them early so that they know right where they stand. This is what we expect of you, and then hold them to that standard. So now I'll go back, and I think then you have to hold yourself to the standard. So most recently, we've been having these Zoom calls once we cut out on March 10th. And I have a very engaged team, and we've been really engaged right here in Princeton, or so we thought. But we have this, we're having regular Monday Zoom meetings. And right after George Floyd was murdered, we started to have very great conversations as a team. And one of my players really challenged me, Elijah Barnes. He challenged me, but he challenged the team, but in particular me. And this was over the course of multiple conversations. But he said, "Hey, Coach, you know, we always do all these things in Princeton. What about Trenton? Where else are we going? Why aren't we more involved in other parts of the state?" And he was right. And part of that for me is we needed to grow outside of the area here. And this is a wonderful community here, Tony, but I feel like we want to have a larger presence than just our own community. And sometimes in your own community, you're insulated from what can make you better. So that was one way in which I feel like our players have made it better. Second way, same kid, Elijah has been leading marches around the state of New Jersey in the last few months. In fact, he's talked to Reggie about some partnership potential with your organization, and he's asked me for my counsel. We talk openly about what's best. How does he handle himself? And what I've learned there is a spirit of humbleness, right? So my relationship with Elijah was largely about running fast and rebounding and doing well in school. And now our relationship's about very much different things that we both feel like is maybe some potential life's work for Elijah. That I don't know. I feel like if I had my own viewpoint and I wasn't listening to him, I would have missed a potential opportunity to really grow just a relationship with just him. And so what that's taught me about the rest of the team is find out what that thing is, what makes them good, and lock in on it and stay with it. I can't think of a third thing right away, Tony, but I mean, my gosh, just this morning, one of the guys sent me an article from I send the guys articles a lot by text. And one of the guys sent me an article from about a New York University professor that's teaching a class on basketball. I'll send it to Reggie. I'm happy to pass it along to everybody. And I learned a little bit about what this professor thinks of basketball and how it informs the world. I think basketball is the best sport in the world. Just because it doesn't cost anything to play it, right? Anybody can do it. It's a world game. Not the most popular sport in the world, that's soccer, but I just think it's the best. And I love that too. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot in reading that. So I don't know, that just tells me about the curiosity piece. And I'm talking a lot here, but getting back to this, reiterating this message, reach out to people that you are, and send them articles that you're thinking about. Hey, did you see this? What do you think of this? Because then it opens up a dialogue.
Thanks, Coach. That's great.
Hey, thank you very much. It's very informational.
Sorry, Sebastian. I love that phrase you said. If we're in our own community, you are insulated from what would make you better. I mean, that's a hell of a quote. I don't know if you quoted from somebody or that's yours, but that's a hell of a quote. I mean, I think that I've never learned anything.
keeping my own circles tight, you know. I mean, of course, your family is everything, but I don't know. I've learned a lot more. I learned a lot talking to you guys, right? Like even just your questions. I appreciate it. I think that it's pivotal that you learn more out. I'm from Vincennes, Indiana, guys. You have no idea. It is so small. We have 2 stoplights. I mean, look at this. The first time I saw 4 lanes going in the same direction was on my official visit to Princeton. I thought that was on Mars, so busy. But now I'm a proud New Jerseyan. I'm voting in the state of New Jersey. I love the state. And I think of that as one of my best qualities, to be very open-minded.
Coach, we had a local player that went out there to community college.
A local what?
A local player, Steve Worthy.
Okay.
He went to community college out there in Vincennes before.
I went to all those games, the Vincennes Blazers.
Yeah.
Went to all those games when I was growing up. That was the camp I went to when I was little. Great place to play. A lot of good players out of there.
Yep. Tony, did you have a question from the audience before I go?
Yes, there's somebody in the audience from Greece. And so he
great.
wants to get your opinion on Giannis. What do you
Love
think?
Giannis. Love him. You know what I love about Giannis? So I'm from the Midwest, as we pointed out. And maybe this sounds old school, but he gets a 2-time MVP, reigning MVP of the year. This is what I heard. 2 things about him. So he's down there in the bubble, and he's hanging out with his brother all the time. They're inseparable. So he's all about family, always about family. And then he gets back, and he goes right, and he meets with the owners and the GMs of the Bucks. There's all this noise. Even my 8-year-old son's like, hey, Dad, did you hear that Giannis is going to go play with Steph Curry at the Warriors? And I was like, what are you talking about? Where did you see that? Not even, all rumors. I can't wait to be a Buck. Let's go. Let's get better. He's totally committed to where he's at. So on the other side of that coin, Tony, is being excellent where you are, right? Like if you're going to do something, do it great right there. And this, Kawhi grabbing Paul George and Anthony Davis going to the Lakers, Kevin Durant winning a couple championships with the Warriors and then getting out. This is, hey, look, that's good. Like that's the way it is. But I think equally as good is being great where you are. Like Damian Lillard, right? I love that.
That's great.
Closing out soon, but I have a question, but I want to get a question in from Marlene, who asks, what is the most important advice that you give to your freshman players?
Oh, wow. So the right now, can I answer that question, Reggie, in 2 parts? Because Zoom freshmen versus regular freshmen. So let me go with Zoom. So Zoom freshmen, almost impossible, right? Like, so I've honestly said to them, go to office hours, Zoom office hours. Like that's literally the best piece of advice I can give them because I have not seen them, since they've been on campus. But engage with the professors because it's almost impossible. And then to try to start, Reggie, that relationship piece, right? Normal time with the freshmen is to tell them like, you deserve to be here. Relax. And now plan the work and then work the plan. So we sit down and we go over their planner. Now, nothing to do with basketball. So and then we do that on Sunday. We go through. Okay, here's what Sunday night you should be writing out what you're going to be doing for the whole week, and and I'm like, okay, so tell me about lunch. How long are you taking for lunch? An hour. I'm like, nope, 20 minutes. And then you're going to do your reading for Wednesday's class for the rest of the 40 minutes you have left in lunch. Does that sound crazy to you? I'm looking at John and Devin and Sebastian. Does that sound crazy? Can you imagine? Like, you guys get a little free time? No, that's what it takes, right? Like, you want to get A's. You do that 20 minutes, and then you put 40 minutes in on your reading, and then you go to the next class, 1 o'clock, right? 1 o'clock to 1:40, and then you don't go mess around with your boys, right? You schedule the 2 o'clock to 2:50. You like naps? A lot of my guys like naps. 2:45 to 3:15. Then you got to come down to practice. So, and stay with it. As soon as you get behind, you're behind. You never get caught up. You never get caught up, right? So, and then when you have a free night, Friday nights usually for us, what do? You don't go hang out with your boys. You don't go into a show hole with Netflix. Get ahead. Go to bed early. Does sound miserable? Well, then guess what? There's so much time to hang out with your friends. So much time. And when you're 35, if you're still talking about, man, this and, oh, I could have had that, you had your chance, right? I'm telling you right now, that's what it takes. Stop taking hour-long lunches. 15, 20 minutes, get your stuff done. See ya, I got to go, and then start studying. Reading those books, get ahead. Do Monday's work on Sunday, and then so on, right? And then plan it out in front. So and then guess what? They forget it all in a week. And then we just do it again the next week. I'm like, all right, where are you? Where are you, right? Some guys, it takes them 4 years. I just graduated a kid. Took me 4 years to get through to him. Then he got, senior year. He's like, all right, I'm doing it. I'm like, well, man, look at you. Like, all of a sudden, you got it all figured out. So.
Good advice, Coach. Earlier, you talked about how much you love to read and, over 1,000 books. Could you share what your top 2 or 3 books were and why?
Yeah. So when I was young, I really got into John Steinbeck and these big, thick John Steinbeck books. I love a book called The Grapes of Wrath. I love biographies. The Alexander Hamilton biography. You guys, the show was based off of. I love learning about how sort of how somebody's raised by their parents. Those are the podcasts I love the most. What informs somebody's thinking as a young person. So I'd say Hamilton, and then one of my favorite books is a book called it's called The Alchemist, and it's really about how you make these different choices in life. So I make this choice to go this way, and all of a sudden that gives me these fork in the road. Then I take this fork in the road, and then it's here. And then all of a sudden you get to the end of all those forks, and you're like, wow, that was interesting. I had a lot of choices to make. Meanwhile, you kind of ended up where you were supposed to end up, right? But the key is that you always make those decisions from this little piece right here, your heart, right? So I'm a coach. And I grew up, I wanted to be a senator or a president and all that stuff. And, next life, this is the one, I definitely doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So those are 3. I'm reading a great book right now called The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, which is blowing my doors off. Love that one. And I got a stack this high next to my bedside table.
Cool.
But I don't know, what are you reading, Reggie?
You know what? I'm a big biography reader as well as the podcast. And I was just telling Tony, a soccer player that we interviewed. I'm sorry, Tony, help me with the name. I'm sorry.
Oh, Billy Gazonis.
Billy Gazonis, local guy. He gave all our kids his book, and Tony was sharing he had already started it. And I said, my life is so crazy. You're talking about the kids need to get ahead. So busy that I love reading, but everything's been an audio book probably for the last year, because when I'm in the car,
yeah,
when I'm walking, I put the AirPods on, and I'm just trying to catch up. Well,
yeah.
But I do miss opening the book.
Yeah.
I do miss that part of it, but I do enjoy it whether I'm reading, listening. You know, and I got to say it's mostly biographies and autobiographies because I like to hear about, just like you tonight, hear about your life and how you overcome and what you've done to make you successful and where you are today. So, you know.
I love hearing that. That's my move too. Like my favorite is like an hour-long run or a workout. Like I can put the earplugs in and listen to an audiobook, maybe a podcast.
Right.
I love the texture of a good book. I love going to the bookstore. I feel like it's my absolute favorite time. Now I have a 2-year-old who's crazy, so I don't get a chance to do a whole lot of reading right now either. But when I do, that's my favorite time.
And I know we're over time. I just got one last question. Are you a goal setter?
Goal setter.
Do you often set goals? And if you do, what are your top 3 goals for this year?
Yeah, so they would have been mostly basketball related, right? But I think that one of my goals, our number one goal as a program, which is generally my goal, is a little bit of what Tony and I talked about, is to branch out of the little bubble that we have here in Princeton, grow our influences in a larger area. Number 2 is I'd like to get back to my 30 books for the year. My wife goes like, "What are you, crazy? What are you trying to do? Like, you're never going to make it." But I'd like to keep that as a lifelong habit. And then 3 would be I'm trying to connect with my guys on a different level. So I've been trying to do occasional handwrites with my current players, which I've never done. But none of my players live here. They're all scattered across the world and the country. I've got guys in Melbourne, Australia, London, England, San Diego, California, all over. So trying to keep up with my handwrites, Reggie, that's a forgotten little thing. Getting a letter in the mail is still kind of a nice thing.
It is. And by the way, the last book I finished, that's the other thing, is you start a book, but you don't finish.
Yeah.
Michelle Obama's Becoming. That was the
well, that's a great one.
That was the last one I finished.
Yeah. Well, that's that podcast. Her most recent podcast is the one that I'm on now.
I haven't heard it yet, but I have it on my.
Really good. Really good. I'm obsessed with good podcasts. I learned so much there. Try to find things that I don't know anything about, and so I.
The good figure out is usually defined as to understand.
Look, no, that's my Lexia. We must have said something that made her go off.
Well, listen, this is, I want to say, like, I know I don't know everybody here on the call that well, but this is a real honor for me to be associated in any way, and that you guys would think of me to talk with you. But I just want to say, like, I'm watching all of you, and I'm pulling really hard for you, and I can't wait to see you in person.
We appreciate that, Coach. And what a lot of folks don't know is that you mentioned it a little bit earlier, is we got connected because this summer, Coach and some of his players reached out and looking for a way to support Trenton and volunteer at the Boys and Girls Club. And they've done some things over summer camp with some of our kids, but also even did a fundraiser for the club. So we appreciate all you do. We're all trying to get through this together, and we're rooting for the Tigers as well. So we really thank you for coming on. We know it's Sunday night and family time, and that football game's on. But
yeah,
we appreciate it.
This is great, and I can't see everybody, but I want to thank in particular the young men on the call. I really appreciate you guys, and maybe if there's one thing that stands out, like, I just would say, like, you got a lot of good people here with you, but keep at it. All right. You guys are doing great. You're taking time on your Sunday to try to make yourselves a little bit better. So I appreciate you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Coach.
Good luck, Coach. Thank you.
All right. All right, Reggie. All right, Mark. We'll see you guys. Take care. Appreciate it. All right. See ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye.